My name's Chris, and my OCD makes me ask terrifying what-if questions every day. I was in fourth grade. We had one of the police officers come in and do the whole don't do drugs talk. And I remember at that moment, something in my brain clicked. And I remember this sensation of, or realization, if you want to call it that, of, oh, the world isn't safe. And I remember, whether it was that day or the next day, going back home and washing my hands a lot. And I didn't even know why I was washing my hands, really. I was just doing it. And my mom was like, why are you washing your hands so much? And I was like, I don't really know. And that's the first time I can really remember it as like a conscious discomfort. It started really as a slow burn. If I were really to rewind this all the way back to when it would really start, it starts small. Because the thing with OCD is it always presents itself as prudent. Oh, it's a good idea if you do this. You should probably do this. You have this goal, right? You want to protect that goal, right? So you should do these things that presumably align with that goal. And then before you know it, you're doing so many of these things that it's taking up a large amount of your time, at least for me, and I think really for all of us. Where OCD starts to tear your life to pieces is what it does to you emotionally and psychologically. It's exhausting. I remember when it really hit. I came home from the gym and I was just like walking back and forth in my garage, crying and screaming and just being like, knowing there was a small, faint little voice left that was like, what are you worried about? But the rest of my brain was on fire, and it just wasn't my brain. It was physical. You could feel every aspect. It was completely and totally visceral. Every cell in my body was screaming about this thing that I was worried about, and it didn't end there. And then when it really spun up, it didn't end for days. I remember at night, my wife trying to console me, trying to tell me the thing that I was worried about was completely off base. Because again, back then we didn't know it was OCD. I was shaking in bed, shaking. I couldn't fall asleep. I couldn't do anything. I was doing like push-ups just to calm myself down, and it was nothing was working. And then it got worse. Then I couldn't, because I was afraid I was going to make my daughter sick. My daughter, who was like the most important thing in the world to me, I felt like I was going to make her sick, that I was going to somehow hurt her by this thing, this like that I had AIDS or whatever my OCD was telling me at the time I had. So I couldn't even hug her because my brain was on fire. And that's what it was like. And then eventually, within the series of days, I couldn't even walk around in my own house because I felt like I was contaminating myself no matter what I was touching. So OCD can start really small, but when it gets to be really bad, it can completely debilitate you. It tore my life completely apart. Yeah, so sometimes we'll talk about how long it takes between onset of symptoms to actually getting the right treatment. And for me, it was a really long time, because I had symptoms probably in fourth grade, maybe even as early as second grade, but none of us knew what they were. I definitely had symptoms all the way through high school and college, and then, had that really bad meltdown right around my 39th birthday, actually. And what was really troubling, in addition to all that horrible reality, was that I was getting treatment, except it was the wrong treatment. And unfortunately, in our OCD community, that is a common statement that we make, because unfortunately, there are many therapists out there who think they treat OCD, but they're using the wrong protocol. And in my case, the wrong protocol took me from being really stressed out and anxious to being hospitalized in 4 weeks. And then when I was completely debilitated and I couldn't take care of myself or my family, my wife found out about the real OCD treatment, the one that actually works, and took me to a real OCD therapist. And I and this is not an overstatement, like, because of that, I considered my wife and my therapist to have saved my life, because if I hadn't had that, I really don't know where I would be. So some of the what ifs or obsessions that still impact me, a lot of us in the OCD community have a main theme, sometimes more than one. But we also really talk about the sort of OCD variety pack. So there are what ifs that happen all day. Some of them that are aligned with my theme, and some that aren't. OCD is a chronic illness. It's a chronic mental illness, and it's always here. But thanks to having the right treatment, I can live an incredibly full life. And in fact, because I've had the treatment, I can live a more full life now than I ever could have with or without the crash previously, because it teaches you to deal with uncertainty. I have contamination OCD, so my OCD is very concerned about germs and touching things and all those types of things. However, I don't worry about driving to the grocery store, but driving carries with it a huge amount of uncertainty as well. What if I get into a car accident? What if somebody crosses the lane? What if all those things? We live in a constant cloud of uncertainty. And so the benefit of correct OCD treatment is, yeah, absolutely, it helps you deal with OCD and manage it and live to your values. But frankly, it also helps you deal with all of life's uncertainties, because that's what life is. It's a series of uncertainties, a series of wonderful moments, sometimes painful moments. And so the better you're able to navigate the feelings of uncertainty and the tremendously intense feelings of discomfort that accompany that, the better off you're going to be and the more full life you can lead. Frankly, there's a lot I would like people to know about my experience with OCD. When I'm talking to people about this, there's so many ways, we in the community try to describe things to each other. There is a feeling of being uniquely broken, that is a real isolation, that you recognize, yeah, other people have problems, but my problems are different. They and or I am irredeemable. Treatment works, but probably not for me. That feeling of I can't be helped, and what gets really bad, worse than that, is when the anxiety and the depression spin up inside of that, and the despair now is birthed. Not only are you uniquely broken, and not only would the treatment probably not work for you, but you wouldn't deserve it even if it did. Because when OCD is spinning up really, really, really badly, and it's torn everything to pieces, and you are just sitting in this hell, and despair and hopelessness is so intense, you do start to think about, maybe it would be better if I didn't have to deal with this. Maybe it would be better if I wasn't here. Maybe I'm a huge burden to my family, and they would be better off without me here. And those thoughts obviously are horrible. And they also severely limit your ability to go get help, because you don't feel like you're worth it, number one, and you're exhausted all the time because your brain's just trying to hold on. It puts it in a really, 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 really hard place. And so for me, the idea of what hope could be around OCD is to be able to help somebody through that, to be able to reach through this, what feels like this impermeable membrane of despair, and hold on to them and say, you are not alone in this. You always feel like you are, but you're not. There's so many of us out there who are experiencing these things that you're experiencing, and there is hope. There is treatment that actually works, and you don't have to live this life. You feel like you're in this pit, and the walls are completely slick. You cannot climb out of it. And hope is that rope that comes down, and that you're still working to pull yourself up that rope. It's you're involved in your own recovery. But it's being able to see that better tomorrow. It's being able to see that this incredibly small world that OCD has crafted doesn't have to be that way. And that you can live with uncertainty. The people with OCD do two things at once. They experience the awful feelings of OCD, and granted they modulate at times, doesn't always have to be up, doesn't always have to be down, but they're there. And you can live your life according to your values. That's really what the hope is that your life does not need to be defined by what OCD is telling you the parameters are. I think new research is really, really, really critical to the OCD world. I mean, we're so lucky to have what we have already, and we're so lucky to have ERP as evidence-based treatment. But if there could be something eventually in the future that goes in there and just fixes the wiring, that would be literally life-changing and life-saving for so many people, metaphorically and literally. It would change people's lives all over the place, and it would be really amazing if that could happen. Because of my OCD, my brain loves to throw very scary what-if questions at me all day. But what if you're not alone, and what if research brings hope?